Ron Howard and the quiet steadiness of his presence have been a comforting constant in Hollywood for more than 6 decades. From the sunlit streets of Mayberry to the bustling sets of Happy Days, he carried the innocence of childhood fame with a gentle smile that hid the pressures of growing up in the spotlight. America watched him transform, but few ever glimpsed the quiet weight he carried behind the curtain. He became more than a beloved actor. He became a storyteller, a director who could make entire generations feel the heartbeat of a film. Yet even as he guided others' narratives, he quietly navigated the tension between expectation and personal truth. Fans never imagined that beneath the accolades and applause, Ron's life had chapters of sacrifice and burden that remained unseen. Now, the latest news about Ron Howard has sent ripples through a world that thought it knew him completely. It challenges the sense of permanence we attach to childhood icons and invites a deeper, intimate reflection. What is the cost of a lifetime lived in the public eye, and what does it reveal about the man behind the legend? Ron Howard was born in 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, to Rance Howard and Jean Spiegel Howard. A family steeped in performance yet grounded by a Midwestern sense of duty. Even as a child, the rhythms of his life were punctuated by rehearsals, auditions, and the occasional glimpse of the bright lights that seemed both inviting and intimidating. The television cameras that would one day make him a household name were distant at first, but the seeds of public expectation took root early. He learned quickly that talent alone would not carry him. Charm, discipline, and resilience would define him before he understood those words. By the time he was 6, Ron had already appeared on local television and in small stage productions, earning praise and applause that were as intoxicating as they were heavy. His father, himself an actor, encouraged him, but every word of encouragement carried the weight of expectation. Success was not a gift but a responsibility. He was a boy whose smile on set concealed the anxiety of understanding that every glance, every reaction, every line delivered was being measured not only by casting directors, but by an invisible audience, whose judgment could alter the trajectory of his life. The role that would cement him in American memory came in 1960. Cast as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, Ron became the embodiment of childhood innocence for a nation. The warm streets of Mayberry, the calm authority of Andy Griffith, and the gentle routines of that fictional town masked a deeper truth. The pressures of performing were constant. He learned that mistakes were scrutinized, laughter was catalogued, and authenticity often had to be curated to meet the expectations of millions. What the cameras could not capture was the quiet tension of a child navigating the duality of who he was privately and who he was asked to be publicly. Behind the scenes, life was structured and exacting. Early mornings were rehearsals, afternoons were filming, and evenings were homework. Childhood for most is defined by freedom, by play, by discovery, yet Ron's early life was regimented by schedules, expectations, and the tacit understanding that deviation could have consequences far beyond a single day. The emotional truth is subtle yet profound. While the nation saw a boy full of charm and innocence, he carried a quiet awareness of responsibility that would shape every decision he made as he matured. Even then, he recognized patterns that would follow him into adulthood. Success brought admiration, but it also carried scrutiny. Praise came with the invisible tag of expectation, a gentle but persistent reminder that being beloved was also a form of labor. He observed his parents' sacrifices, their balancing of ambition with family, and internalized the lesson that performance was inseparable from duty. This awareness fostered a resilience and professionalism that would define his career, yet it also introduced a tension between public perception and private truth, a tension that would resurface decades later in the choices he made as a filmmaker. By the late 1960s, Opie Taylor had become more than a character. He was a symbol of childhood ideals, and Ron Howard was inseparably linked to him. The nation adored him, yet few understood the undercurrent of responsibility and self-restraint that marked his every action. This early life, filled with both admiration and quiet pressure, left him with an intimate understanding of the cost of visibility. How does a boy so cherished navigate the weight of expectation without losing the essence of himself? This question would define his transition from child actor to the man and director he would become, quietly informing the choices that shaped his life and eventually, the lives of audiences who would come to know him through his films. In 1974, Ron Howard stepped into a new chapter of his life with the role of Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. The world saw the cheerful, all-American boy next door. The young man whose smile lit up screens and invited audiences into a simpler, more nostalgic version of life. Behind the scenes, however, Ron was navigating the uncharted waters of adolescence under public scrutiny, a stage where every gesture, every expression, and every choice felt magnified. The boy who had once been Opie Taylor now carried not just a character, but a cultural expectation. Hollywood demanded consistency, reliability, and an image that could withstand scrutiny from fans, critics, and producers alike. Ron's days became a balancing act between rehearsals, shooting schedules, and the relentless pressure to remain the embodiment of the good kid everyone adored. He learned that charm and professionalism were inseparable from survival, that even a minor misstep could ripple across contracts, public perception, and the fragile continuity of his career. Friends recall the quiet intensity with which he approached each day, a focus that was as much about preserving his own sense of self as it was about fulfilling the expectations of others. The emotional truth of this period lies not in the accolades, but in the tension between who he was and who he was expected to be. Audiences laughed at Richie Cunningham's misadventures, but Ron Howard, the man, quietly shouldered a private burden. Growing up publicly was a lesson in restraint, patience, and careful negotiation of identity. Every scene was a rehearsal in composure, every interview a subtle negotiation of authenticity and expectation. Even as fame brought opportunity, it also introduced isolation. Friends and family observed a young man who seemed cheerful, yet carried a constant awareness that his childhood had been borrowed, a performance that required vigilance. This period also marked the beginning of his desire for creative control. While acting provided visibility and acclaim, it could not satisfy a deeper yearning to tell stories on his own terms. Directing offered an escape from the rigidity of typecasting, a way to move from performing for the world to shaping narratives that resonated personally. Yet even this transition carried emotional weight. He had to reconcile gratitude for the opportunities acting afforded him with the knowledge that public expectation was an invisible anchor. The tension between freedom and obligation became a guiding principle in his life, quietly preparing him for the demands of the directorial path he would pursue in the decades to follow. Amid the laughter and bright sets of Happy Days, Ron also navigated the realities of adolescence and young adulthood under a spotlight that rarely dimmed. Friendships, family interactions, and even private moments were framed by the expectation of audience approval. The emotional truth is subtle yet profound. While the world embraced Richie Cunningham, Ron Howard was learning lessons in endurance, self-possession, and the quiet sacrifices that accompany life lived under observation. It was a period defined not only by success but by the shaping of character, by the negotiation of selfhood against the unyielding tide of expectation. By the time the 70s drew to a close, Ron had learned the art of navigating public adoration while quietly seeking personal autonomy. The lessons of childhood fame evolved into strategies for managing adulthood, creative ambition, and private life. What acting had demanded of him emotionally laid the foundation for the man he would become behind the camera. The question remained, however, could the boy who learned to perform under pressure now find freedom in telling the stories of others, and what would he discover about himself in the process? By the early 1980s, Ron Howard had begun a transition that would define his life in Hollywood. He stepped behind the camera. Acting had brought him fame, but directing offered a new form of creative control, a chance to shape stories in ways he could not as an actor. His early work behind the lens included Grand Theft Auto in 1977 and Night Shift in 1982, projects that tested his skills, patience, and ability to manage large-scale productions. The public would come to know him as a director of immense versatility, yet the private reality of orchestrating complex films was demanding in ways few outsiders could see. Howard developed a reputation for meticulous attention, kindness to cast and crew, and unwavering professionalism. He navigated high-pressure environments where every decision had cascading effects, from schedules and budgets to the performances of actors who relied on him for guidance. Films such as Cocoon in 1985 and Apollo 13 in 1995 showcased his ability to balance technical precision with human emotion. Critics and audiences praised the results, yet behind the scenes, Howard carried the weight of ensuring each story honored the vision of the writers, the expectations of producers, and the hopes of viewers who trusted him to deliver. The emotional truth of this period lies in the quiet endurance required to sustain such a career. Directing is a profession of constant decision-making, often with no room for error. Howard's work demanded not only technical skill, but also emotional intelligence. He had to anticipate reactions, manage personalities, and maintain morale. These pressures were magnified by the visibility of his films. When something succeeded, he received acclaim, and when challenges arose, the responsibility fell squarely on his shoulders. His reputation for stability and fairness was hard-won, reflecting years of discipline and observation, lessons first learned as a child actor navigating expectation. Successes continued with A Beautiful Mind in 2001 and Frost Nixon in 2008. Each project required a careful balancing act, blending narrative, performance, and audience engagement. Howard became known for films that were emotionally resonant yet meticulously crafted, an approach that set him apart in Hollywood. Yet the human cost was subtle: long hours, intense focus, and the mental energy needed to shepherd a project from conception to completion left little space for rest or personal reflection. He had become a man who carried the stories of others with a level of care and attention few could appreciate, while his own private life remained largely protected from scrutiny. Amid the accolades, Howard's approach reflected a deep respect for collaboration. He understood that a film's success depended on collective effort, and that leadership required patience, empathy, and foresight. Yet these qualities, cultivated over decades, came with quiet sacrifices. He devoted time, energy, and focus to projects that demanded everything he had in the present, while continually navigating the expectations built from his own history in Hollywood. His work made him visible to the world, while his private sacrifices went largely unnoticed. A public figure celebrated for the work of many, while privately enduring the constant responsibilities of creative leadership. By the late 1990s, Ron Howard had transformed from a beloved child actor into one of Hollywood's most trusted directors, a man whose name carried authority and reliability. Every film carried the imprint of his judgment, care, and perseverance. The question remained, as he carried the stories of so many others, what costs accrued quietly in his own life, and how would the next chapter reveal the balance between professional devotion and personal need? By 1975, Ron Howard had settled into a life that balanced professional success with personal stability. He married Cheryl Alley, a longtime partner, beginning a partnership that would endure for decades. Together, they built a family while navigating the demands of Hollywood, raising children, including Bryce Dallas Howard, who would follow in her father's footsteps to become an actress and filmmaker. The Howard household was one of support, collaboration, and careful guidance, yet even within this framework, the pressures of his career were never far from view. Raising a family while directing major films required constant negotiation of time and energy. Ron's projects often demanded long hours on set, travel to multiple locations, and the management of complex productions. Each film carried immense responsibility, not only to studios and audiences but to the hundreds of professionals whose work he oversaw. Balancing this professional intensity with family life required a structured approach and thoughtful planning, shaping daily routines, vacations, and milestones around the needs of both work and home. These were choices made quietly, deliberately, to maintain the family foundation that Cheryl and he had built. His children grew up observing the intersection of creativity, discipline, and devotion. Bryce Dallas Howard has spoken publicly about the influence of her father's work ethic and commitment, describing a household where storytelling was valued and curiosity encouraged. Yet even amid the warmth of family life, the demands of a career in Hollywood could not be entirely contained. Set schedules, production deadlines, and travel occasionally drew Ron away from home for weeks at a time. These absences were necessary for his work, yet they also highlighted the constant tension between professional dedication and the intimate presence a family requires. Private moments of reflection, loss, and challenge were often shielded from the public eye. While audiences saw the successful director and devoted father, the quiet toll of constant responsibility remained largely invisible. The human truth of this period is in the balance he sought to provide stability and support, while also meeting the demands of projects that could not pause for personal needs. The effort to manage both worlds required endurance, organization, and emotional attention, qualities that became as central to his life as any technical skill used on set. Howard's approach to parenthood and family extended beyond logistics. He remained committed to modeling a life of integrity, emphasizing values of respect, curiosity, and patience. His children were witnesses not only to the process of filmmaking, but to the deliberate care with which he navigated challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. Family life became a parallel narrative, running alongside his professional trajectory, and providing a grounding force that informed choices both on set and at home. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Howard's career had reached a level of prominence few in Hollywood achieve. Yet even as awards, critical acclaim, and box office success accumulated, his family remained central. The emotional truth of this chapter is subtle. Even a man celebrated for his vision and leadership could experience the quiet weight of responsibility at home, balancing love, attention, and presence against the ongoing demands of a public and professional life. As fans watched his films, few realized the care required behind the scenes to maintain equilibrium between family and career. Ron Howard's legacy is not only one of cinematic achievement, but also one of devotion to the people closest to him. It is within this context that the latest news about him resonates. The man who has carried the stories of the world has also carried the responsibilities, sacrifices, and quiet burdens of a life lived both publicly and intimately. The question emerges as his family and audience continue to witness his journey. What deeper truths about dedication, love, and endurance will they come to understand? In recent weeks, Ron Howard made an announcement that captured the attention of fans around the world. After decades of continuous work in Hollywood, he revealed that he would be stepping back from certain directing responsibilities to focus on personal projects and spend more time with his family. For a man whose life has been defined by long hours on set, overseeing complex productions, and guiding entire teams to bring stories to life, this decision marked a notable shift. Fans who had followed his career since the days of Happy Days and The Andy Griffith Show were surprised, confronted with the reality that even icons evolve and reprioritize over time. The reaction was immediate, across social media and news outlets. Admirers expressed admiration, concern, and nostalgia, sharing reflections on his body of work and the impact his films had on their lives. For decades, Howard's presence had felt constant. Every award season, every major release a reminder of his creative vision. Suddenly, the announcement introduced a quiet tension between the permanence audiences imagined and the natural progression of life. Fans were reminded that even figures who seem unchanging are subject to the same needs, choices, and limitations as anyone else. The news underscored a broader truth about Howard's career. His devotion to storytelling has always been paired with personal sacrifice. From childhood roles to the orchestration of films like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and Frost Nixon, He carried the responsibility of guiding large teams and ensuring narratives resonated emotionally with viewers. That level of dedication requires energy, time, and focus. Stepping back was not a retreat from creativity, but a conscious recalibration, a recognition of the need to balance professional ambition with the private life that has always existed alongside the public one. For fans, the announcement prompted reflection on what it means to grow alongside someone who has been a steady presence for decades. Howard's career has intertwined with audiences' memories, shaping cultural touchstones and providing comfort, excitement, and inspiration. The revelation that he would adjust his professional involvement made clear that even admired figures navigate change, reassess priorities, and make choices guided by personal needs. It offered a rare glimpse into the human side of a man often seen only through his work, emphasizing that life behind the camera carries its own demands, challenges, and decisions. The announcement also highlighted the generational aspect of his influence. For those who grew up with Opie Taylor or Richie Cunningham, Howard's films and television work have been part of a continuous thread connecting childhood, adulthood, and now the understanding of life's natural transitions. Fans responded with gratitude for his contributions, recognizing that stepping back does not diminish the legacy he has created, but reinforces the humanity behind it. It is a reminder that dedication, endurance, and creativity are intertwined with personal choice, and that even the most public figures must prioritize balance and well-being. Ultimately, the latest news about Ron Howard is less about career change and more about life's continuity. It invites reflection on the cost of a career lived in constant public view, the care required to maintain both professional and private responsibilities, and the evolution that accompanies decades of achievement. Fans are left with admiration, nostalgia, and renewed appreciation for a man who has shaped storytelling while quietly carrying the weight of responsibility, both on screen and at home. The question emerges, as he navigates this next chapter, how will audiences continue to witness the intersection of creativity, devotion, and the human truths that have defined his life? Ron Howard's journey from the quiet streets of Mayberry to the towering sets of Hollywood has been defined by resilience, devotion, and an enduring love for storytelling. His childhood, framed by early fame and the weight of expectation, shaped a man capable of navigating immense pressures while maintaining an unshakable sense of integrity. As Richie Cunningham and Opie Taylor, he became a symbol of innocence and reliability. Yet the lessons of responsibility he carried as a child would follow him into every role, every production, and every decision as a director. Through decades of filmmaking, Howard carried the stories of others with meticulous care, balancing the demands of public life with the private rhythms of family. His devotion to his craft and his loved ones has been quiet yet profound, a testament to endurance and integrity in a world defined by visibility. The latest news reminds fans that even those who seem constant evolve, pause, and recalibrate. His life is a narrative of dedication, love, and human complexity, a reflection of the cost and beauty of a career lived fully, honestly, and intimately. For more emotional stories, check out this video.